I think Tampa will take both games in Tampa to start the series, and then Montreal will win 2 games in Montreal. But then Tampa will win the next one, and then Montreal will win the last 2. I think Montreal will do the same thing the Bruins did. They'll lose all their games on the road until the last one, the one that matters, happens, and they'll take home the cup. What are your predictions?
Suns have the best backcourt duo.
Yeah, so we've already talked about Burrow a lot, especially how he's influenced the Bengals organization to do some questionable things.
A great job from the Islanders to rebound off that and force a Game 7 with Bellavie's game-winning goal in overtime in Game 6.
We don't talk about the 2010s because the 2010s had the Astros, and if the Astros didn't happen, the Yankees would have won in 2017 over the Dodgers.
I'm going to say it's during the Week 17 game after the Cowboys have clinched the division, so we just put Benanucci in.
Vegas was really outplayed the last 3 games of this series, and they did not seem like they wanted it as much as Montreal did.
And then the Oilers versus the Jets. Jets haven't been playing well. Oilers, you got a great offense with Connor McDavid. So I have them sweeping them.
Yeah, well, I don't think you heard my point. The San Francisco Giants have 3 more in the 2010s than the Rangers have in their entire history. So, yeah.
It's hard to get back and to get back-to-back wins. And I don't see the Lightning doing it here, so I have them losing to the Hurricanes in 6.
DeAndre Ayton, I think, will step up in this series and shut down Jokic enough for this to work out for them.
He was close to Frank Reich, and they want Frank Reich back, so that's what they got. It's their discount Frank Reich in Eagles' eyes.
Kaprizov and the rest of this crew, Jordan Greenway, who doesn't get enough props. He definitely is somebody who needs to be mentioned more.
What would you have said if I bet you $100 at the end of the round robin and start of the playoffs that the Stars would be in the Stanley Cup playoffs? Or Stanley Cup Finals.
Hi, this is Julie Dobbs. You're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our 73rd episode. Today we'll be reviewing the NHL Stanley Cup Finals. Make sure to check out our previous episode where we did a conference finals review and finals review of Game 1 and predictions for the NBA. And now this concludes our predictions where we did a new format. There was a slight learning curve. Austin and I combined for a total of 15 points. Someone's got to win it, and I won with 9 points versus Austin 6. But let's talk about the finals now. Just a great story of how the Tampa Bay Lightning won in 9 months since their last Stanley Cup win, which was against the Stars. And we'll talk about the LTIR rule with the Lightning versus others near the end. We were talking about it off there, but Vasilevsky 13-0 with 13-0 after a loss. And I believe he had a shutout in each of the game following a loss this whole postseason, and that's just incredible. What are your thoughts, Austin?
Yeah, that stat is over the last 2 seasons, by the way. He's 13-0 after a loss in the last 2 seasons, because obviously he was the goalie when the Columbus Blue Jackets swept them. So it's ever since that sweep when they obviously were the President's Trophy winners and were so good in the regular season and then ended up not even winning a playoff game to winning back-to-back cups in very controversial fashion. But yeah, Vasilevsky, he is amazing. He is a top 3 goalie in the league, and with such great defensemen in front of him, it makes him look like he's the best. I would still argue that it's really hard. Goalie is a very tough position, and I think Carey Price, if given equal defenders like Victor Hedman and crew and McDonough, obviously, and Sergachev and all these guys, that he would look even better than he did. And he still was exceptional in Game 4 and 5. But, the Canadians were just outmatched, not only experience-wise, but also skill-wise. and I'm really surprised how well the Canadians did shutting down all the star players. Um, Still having a great penalty kill, despite the fact that there are all these star players on Tampa that can get paid inordinate amount of money. That somehow the team with one of the worst penalty kills during the regular season can have one of the best of all time during the postseason. It's kind of a crazy story. After having only a 78.5% in the regular season and now a 91.4 or something like that in the postseason. The run comes to an end for Carey Price and Shea Weber and Corey Perry. I'm really hoping that they're gonna another shot next year, but I don't know if that's where my prediction is gonna fall.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Incredible run. The talking about Montreal's penalty kill, they did really well because I think this was before Game 5, but the last 7 power plays before Game 5, because and even the power plays during Game 5, I don't think Tampa scored.
No, they didn't. I
Okay,
believe they went 0
so
for 3 or something like that.
okay, so that's 0 for 10 in their power plays for Tampa Bay during that series because one key power play was the power play in Game 4 where they had about 3 minutes in overtime and they couldn't even capitalize on that. And then Montreal wins. Just a great job. And you mentioned Columbus getting swept, how the Tampa Bay got swept. Just a great job rebounding and getting back to back. And then, especially under these circumstances, it's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing. And then Vasilevsky has just been incredible. And Montreal, Gary Price played incredible in Game 5. It's just with the offense Tampa Bay has, due to some stars coming back like Kucherov and Stamkos, and I believe Stamkos is a big player on the penalty kill, so that may help explain how the penalty kill got better. So it's incredible. But some good things from Montreal Canadiens are Josh Anderson and Suzuki played well. You got Josh Anderson in the trade this past offseason. And then Suzuki was from the Pacioretty trade. So those are some good things for the future. However, for the next season, I'm not sure. Maybe if they make some moves, they could see themselves, but they definitely need to get some scorers. And I know Corey Perry was on a 1-year contract, so maybe they bring him back. We don't know. But any more thoughts?
Yeah, so I think you failed to mention this, but this is the second year in a row where the finalists, both of them obviously, including Tampa, will play in the same division the next year. So obviously the Stars and Lightning this year were in the same division after last year meeting up in the final, and then next year I believe the divisions will go back, and the Atlantic will include obviously Tampa and Montreal as it always has. So that'll be interesting to see. But I feel like this was a uh, one hurrah, last hurrah, whatever you want to say. I don't think Montreal is going to come back in next year. The Atlantic's way too tough. I don't think Tampa will be the winner of the Atlantic. The Atlantic is an incredibly hard division, and the Tampa Bay Lightning, because they're so far over the cap, and I don't anticipate them having to use the LTIR again next season, are going to have to blow things up for them to have any chance of getting under the cap. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I really wish the Montreal team were to get to face a team that was equal playing field, cap wise or otherwise. They were just outmatched in every part of the game except for the penalty kill, and it really hurts to see a team that's led by greats like Shea Weber and Carey Price, who this may be their only chance, and that's tough to see.
Yeah, yeah, it would be interesting to see how they will do both next year, as things I believe will go back to the same division that they were before. And then I want to talk about the cap situation, but I can't remember what else I was going to say. I definitely agree Tampa Bay is going to blow it up. And you also have the expansion draft where they have to leave some players off. So Seattle could get a really good player. there. So Tampa Bay is definitely going to go under. But you've hinted at it. I don't think it's as egregious as some people may think. It's a rule of the LTIR. Ben Bishop and Steve Johns used it. A lot of teams used it. Just Kucherov was able to come back in the playoffs. So I agree that the LTIR should exist to get someone else. And if they come back during the playoffs, that's great. And if they make a run, they make a run like Tampa did. And Tampa Bay being so over far to the cap, you have to pay the money to the right people, and they did, and it worked out for them. I don't know if they'll be back. I definitely see them being back, especially with Vasilevsky as their goaltender, because we've seen how far goaltenders can get their team to the playoffs. We saw with Carey Price this year. Vasilevsky was a part, but the offense for Tampa Bay was incredible. And then you, of course, have Khudobin last year. What are your thoughts?
I adamantly disagree. I feel like the player on the LTIR should not be able to come back during the postseason, as that is the most important part of this season. I don't understand why you would have an LTIR where you can't come back and then allow them to be over the cap for the postseason when that's where everything's made. You see teams that were over the cap, like the Islanders were over the cap. That's because their captain, one of their best players, Anders Lee, was out for the year. So they had to sign other players, and obviously Anders Lee was going to be out for the rest of the year, so it didn't matter. The Panthers also had an important player out, and they were over the cap. Same thing with the Stars. It's different. Those players are actually out for the whole year. I when I made my prediction, I heard that Kucherov was going to come back, but I just didn't anticipate him to be 100% healthy because I anticipated that he was actually hurt for the entire time that he was out. But I just don't see that being the case. Unless he had a Jordan-esque comeback. I haven't seen somebody come right after an injury and play like this in person in my life. And the only person I can compare it to is Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was out for a very long time, came back at the very end of the season when the doctors told him, or the team told him not to, and the doctor said if he injured his foot like that again, he may have to retire. He came back, and then he had one of his best postseasons ever. But that obviously he got to play in the regular season, and obviously the Bulls didn't go over the cap. So I mean, it's a whole different story there. But what was that?
Sorry to interrupt, but Kucherov, he did pull a groin, and then he had to have surgery to fix it. To have that surgery, we saw how long it took Tyler Seguin, and he was able to play 10 games near the end of the season. I think Kucherov being that well, I attribute it to rehab. He may have, whoever team doctors for Tampa Bay or his own doctors may have said, take some rest and we'll get some on ice work with you, but no physical contact yet. So I attribute it to his great play, to the rehab he did. And rehab can be a lengthy time, physical therapy with all that, and making sure that you are fully enough to play. And then you have the mental side of it. So that would be my reason. Now, Tampa is definitely going to blow it up. I don't see another star player like Kucherov going back on the LTIR just to take advantage of it. So if it becomes a consistent thing, then I'd probably say the NHL will look into it. But if it's just a one-time occurrence, I think it's just a coincidence and a lucky thing.
I don't think it ever will be a one-time occurrence. We already saw this with the Blackhawks. They were a little bit over the cap and a lot less egregious than the Lightning, and people using that as an excuse for why the Lightning did it this year. But no, teams will use this forever, and I don't understand why now you would. I don't understand why next time you change it when this time is as egregious as possible. I mean, when we consider the fact that they are $19.7 million over the cap and that the highest player in the NHL is worth $12.5 million, that is an insane amount over the cap for an organization, or a league where the highest paid player, like I said, is $12.5 million. That's more than Connor McDavid. I saw tweets, I saw jokes saying to give Connor McDavid over to the Canadians for this round so they could be close to what the Tampa Bay Lightning's cap are, and they still would not be over. They'd still be more than the amount that the Blackhawks were over the cap when they played them in the finals before. It just leaves it to where I don't believe that the Canadians had a shot. I went with the Canadians because I thought the run may continue, but after seeing the depth scoring that the Lightning have, and that really gives a lot of credit to the Islanders for how good they are and how soundly Barry Trotz has that defense held, but the Canadians just have no chance against a team as depth scoring as they the Lightning are. They have way too many good players on that team, and you can tell by their cap situation.
Well, I think the 3 games for the series, Tampa Bay played incredible. And then Montreal started to have a resurgence in game 4 and game 5. They played much better than they did in the first 3 games of the series. I think if they start playing how well they did in game 4 and 5, we may not be talking about it yet because there may be a game 6 for that reason.
Well, I disagree because the best team in Game 2 was the Montreal Canadiens, and they lost 3-1. The Canadiens outplayed Tampa. The difference is how good Tampa's defense is and how good Vasilevsky is, and that's where you really get to the unfair part. Is that they're not only over the cap by a ton, they also have potentially the best goalie in the league. So you get there are no special breaks. There are no breaks. Vasilevsky plays way too well for you to win a game because of fluke play. So I believe that they outplayed Tampa in game 2 and game 5, and they lost both of those games. And I believe Tampa outplayed Montreal in game 4, and Tampa obviously lost. And obviously Tampa was the better team in game 1 and 3. So it's tough to see, but like I said, the only reason why I picked the Canadians to win this series is because I saw the valiant effort that the Islanders put up. And that just really shows how great of a coach Barry Trotz is. He's obviously won a cup before and without the need to go over the cap. So I feel like he was prepared for the situation a lot better than the Canadians were, who've made the first round last year, have an interim head coach, went through 3 head coaches, had multiple COVID cases on their team during the playoffs. This is a special run. It was a really fun ride, and I appreciate them for putting up a fight. But this was David versus Goliath, and like 99% of the time, Goliath wins.
Well, Tampa Bay also had some COVID issues, maybe not to the extent of Montreal, because wasn't Montreal, that was the team that was like 20 days off, correct?
Well, I was referring to the playoffs when their head coach was out for almost the entire series against Vegas and the beginning of the series versus the Lightning, and also Yoel Armia was out for part of the series against Tampa as well, and he's one of their premier players. So I mean, it just hurts when that happens during the playoffs, and I mean, they had everything go wrong. I believe they really could put up a fight and made this a better series, but way too much experience, way too much good players, way too little experience on their team, and I the Eastern Conference is just way too good for them in the future. I see, and the only team I think this will become a common occurrence. The LTIR being used as it is, so we'll see if it does. We'll see if that happens. I really hope it doesn't because I believe it makes it to where some people make the champion invalidated, where some people are going to say, "Oh, this doesn't matter. They're so far over the cap, it doesn't matter." And that definitely has happened for other. It's crazy because Tampa's won 3 cups, and most people think it's not most people. That's totally wrong. Some people think it counts as 0 because there's obviously the goal that Calgary had in 04 that definitely was a goal, and Tampa should have lost that game. But I mean, they didn't have replay review to say that it was a goal, but it most likely was a goal. I've seen a replay; it looks like a goal. And then last year there was COVID, and some people for some reason think that year doesn't count, which doesn't make much sense to me. That I feel like that was a really hard championship to win, and they all credit in the world to Tampa for pulling that one off. And then this year, there's so much over the cap that some people won't count it. And obviously, they didn't break any rules, so I count it. It's a valid championship, but I'm just saying that it's probably not the look that the NHL wanted after all the reffing issues that occurred, as many people didn't like the officiating. And then that's compacted with the Blackhawks scandal that's currently going on, and that's even compounded with the fact that they're way over the cap. And I don't think it's a good look for the NHL to have all these issues going on at the same time. So Gary Bettman's going to have some fixing to do, and we'll see if that's going to change in the future.
Yeah, and Gary Bettman, to me, is a good commissioner. So I believe he will fix some of these issues. And I thought the LTIR got implemented during that Chicago run. So I didn't know if Chicago was still getting used, or teams were still getting used to that rule, because there can be some adjustment. So I kind of just see this as a fluke. But if it happens a couple more times, then I see Gary Bettman making a change. Do you have something else to say?
Yeah, but if that happens, wouldn't that invalidate this run? Because wouldn't that make it a legal run? They do it illegally. If they make it illegal in the future, doesn't that make this an illegal run? That's where my thing is. If he does change it in the future, but he says this one's validated now, and then it goes in the future and says, oh no, now you can't do this. Well, then why could you do it before? Is my kind of thing. Like if you're saying, well, I mean, it's really the Astros thing to me, because if you're saying, like they said, it was illegal what they did, right? So it basically invalidated their championship. So if if they investigate this and saying that from now on this is illegal, well then doesn't that invalidate the championship? Just like the MLB did an investigation saying that what the Astros did was illegal, so now it invalidates it. I mean, I don't know what you see that, but if they say that they should not be able to do this, then a team who doesn't their championship not count, or does it? I mean, what's your opinion on that?
That's a very good question. I think so. In the Astros situation, to me, that one screams out more. You definitely knew you were going over the rules, or there would be some part where you're going over the rules. Like I have to bang a trash can. Like to me, that invalidates the part of the game in baseball. Like there's no thing in me trying to guess the pitch because I know the pitch because I'm having my friend bang on a trash can. While with Tampa Bay's case and other teams, if they do it, they just had a player come on and they still had to play well. And Kucherov did play well after coming off the LTIR.
Yeah, he was the best. He was probably the best skater in the playoffs. And skater meaning non-goalie. For those who don't understand what skater means.
To me, there's still an element of chance in maybe he misses a shot. But with the Astros, to me, it seems more concrete. Like, I know I'm going to hit this ball because I know how to time it. I know what pitch you're throwing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but my point's more on the fact that they went back and they said what the Astros did was illegal. So most view that championship as invalidated. However, if you say in the future, because more teams are starting to use this, that now it's illegal to do that, I feel like that invalidates the championship because you're saying that what they did was illegal now, which makes it illegal then, or should have been illegal then.
I don't see it that way. I see as it. We have seen people take too much advantage of this. Like I think it they would have to purposefully put someone on the LTIR, and that's why I think they changed the rule if it happens. But I don't see that happening. With this one, I think it's okay. That's how it was then. So it's still a championship. You did have to fight for it, and Kucherov did play well. So I see it as being validating that championship. With the Astros, to me, what rule they broke is what invalidates it for me and how they broke that rule. But if it was someone else had a player and he joined and then they win it and then they said, well, we can't do that anymore, I still wouldn't see it as an invalidation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of understand what you're going with. But wouldn't it still be wrong if you're looking back at it? Because if we change the rule, let's say you change a law, right? But somebody did it in the past, you'd say that they were wrong to do that, right? Or no? Because during their time it was not a law.
Yeah, no. And then keep it back with sports, like with the salary cap. The salary cap was implemented in 2005 to 2006.
Well, the difference with that is that everybody's on the same playing field. With this, I don't think that's the case because you're not guaranteeing that your own team is going to get injured. Like, not everybody's going to injure their own players or tell them to stay out for an extended period of time or try to take advantage of that rule because they didn't know that it was going to be as useful as it is. I don't feel like everybody was on the same playing field.
Well, the rule is still available to everyone. The thing here is just the Tampa Bay's one of their star players was injured and out for the rest of the season, but he was available during the playoffs. So I think the
I just feel
rule
like
was
it has to be
available.
fixed immediately, or this will be viewed as a common occurrence. Because like I don't think you should be. I'm fine with the LTIR where you can go over the cap. That's not my issue. My issue is that he played in the playoffs. I have a major issue with that because that's the most important part of the season. That's when everything counts. The regular season really does not count when half the team makes the playoffs. If you're an okay team, you can make the playoffs. Bad teams miss the playoffs. You don't miss the playoffs if you're a above average team because average would be 50%, and that's half the league, right? Average is 50%, so average is half the
Sure.
league, and half the league makes the playoffs. So if you're barely above average, you make the playoffs. So the regular season really does not matter. And so to say that the player can play in the postseason when that's the most important part, yeah, I just don't see that being right.
That is an excellent point you make. I just think, to me, it seems fine. Like, hey, I was injured, but I can play now. Um, Playoffs, that can happen. But then you also talk about the rule with after the trade deadline, if you sign someone, they can't play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. I just don't see a big problem. To me, Kucherov was injured, then he came back, and they spent their money wisely on the player to replace that replaced him to fill in for him during the regular season that they did so well in the regular season. And then they were able to get Kucherov back because there could be many reasons. The guy they don't pay the right money to doesn't do well, and then they miss the playoffs entirely.
Well, at
And
that
we're
point,
not.
at that point when you say, "Oh, they didn't do it because they made the wrong moves," well, they're expected to win it when you're that much over the cap, and the player is going to play in the postseason. I just didn't really expect him to be 100% like he was. But I mean, if you're just adding the player you add to replace the player that's hurt, they can play together now in the playoffs, right? Because you're not
But
going
you
to have to.
still lose one player that couldn't, like, it becomes a tough decision. And
Not
that's
necessarily
still,
because the LTIR takes players off the roster. Like they don't take a spot on the roster, and in the playoffs you can take out the lower players on your team and put back on the LTIR players.
yeah. So you're losing one player when you put him back on in the
Yes,
playoffs.
but losing your worst player for your best player is not a big issue. Kucherov is their best skater, and so by putting him back on for whoever their worst skater was is a win-win scenario. Not only are you losing your worst player, but you're also adding your best player. So I mean, it's an issue that has to be solved immediately, or I feel like it'll be abused in the future.
I don't see it being abused. To me, there's still a chance. I don't think it guarantees if someone's over the cap that it guarantees you're going to win the championship. If you're 20 million, you're going to win the championship
But it
because you're
didn't
over the cap.
guarantee that the Astros were going to win a championship because the Astros still had to get home field advantage in the playoffs. If the Astros didn't get home field advantage in the playoffs, they wouldn't have made it to the World Series. It didn't guarantee them anything. They had to still win those games at home that they won 2-1 in the first two games against the Yankees. I mean, they lost all the games on the road because they don't use the trash can on the road, but it didn't guarantee them a playoff spot. If they would have messed up one game against the Yankees or Dodgers at home, they lose the series. It's not guaranteed. It just gives them an advantage that is unfair, and I believe that is what this is. An unfair advantage that all the teams aren't afforded. So, I mean, we'll see. I feel like we can move on to our predictions for next season. Uh, you can go ahead and mention
Yeah,
yours first, and then I'll mention
yeah.
mine.
And I'll do a final comment. That is a very good comparison between the Astros and Tampa Bay. I just disagree with the Astros and Tampa Bay. But I don't see it being a thing. But we can move on to the predictions. So this is going to be definitely two early Stanley Cup finalists and then the winner. So with me, I am going to go with the Islanders and then the Colorado Avalanche. And then I have the Colorado Avalanche winning that series, winning the Stanley Cup. What about you?
Yeah, so I'll have let me think. So I think I'll go in a different route. I'm not going to have either of those teams making the finals. I think Pittsburgh will make a run. They'll get a good goaltender during free agency and make a run and make the finals. And then I'll see Vegas making a push and making the finals, and I'll have Pittsburgh winning that. I feel like they're going to have a lot of desperation, uh, and if they can get a good goaltender, I feel like they're the best team in the league. So we'll see what happens. Those are our predictions. We'll see if they come true.
May I ask one question? Is
Yeah,
Andre
sure.
Fleury still on the Vegas Golden Knights when he faces the Pittsburgh Penguins?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
I don't feel like
wanted to
anyone
ask.
will pick him up, and I don't think anyone can take him because of the cap.
But they could do
Because you
LTIR.
normally, because in most scenarios, other than Tampa, for some reason, you can't go over the cap. No one can take him on because you can't have a goaltender with that amount of money.
But
Normally,
if you get him and then use the LTIR, then it could work.
he's not hurt. That's my point.
Not yet.
Yeah,
You don't know. Could have an injury.
that's the reason why the Tampa Bay thing is defunct because
I'm just
I
playing
just feel
devil's
like-
advocate right now.
yeah, I can tell.
Okay. It would be interesting to see how it happens. Thank you for joining us. Make sure to check out our interviews and make sure to check out our last episode and be on the lookout for more stuff. Next episode, we will be doing the MLB draft. It's MLB mock draft to predict it. And that's going to be interesting. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.